Let's call this guy up. Called up my mortgage man. I said, "What up? Rates up. What's your budget?" I said, "Honestly, I don't know nothing about mortgages. I've got a video for you. Follow me." What up? Matty Loans, your mortgage Macklemore, back with another video. So, as we've previously discussed, maybe this is the year for you to finally purchase a home, which would make now the best time for you to create a budget. That is, unless you plan on paying cash for that home. You might think the mortgage application is a good place to start. A for application, right? We spoke about this in the last video, but this week the bus stops on B, budget. And a lot of people will ask their loan officer for help in this department, and may start with an actual home you want to qualify for. And if not, just a general approval where you're going to use DU or LP, the agency parameters, to help you set the bar. That's cool. It's never just one way to do things. And in this DIY era, let's cover a few things that might help you create a mortgage map for yourself this year. Now, a word to the wise. No matter what the lender projects as your creditworthiness or lack thereof, you know your budget best. There's more to housing than just payment. If you've ever owned a home before, there's maintenance, upkeep, constant cost it takes to manage and maintain a home. And then think about it, it's also going to cost money to move your crew from town to town, so think about it. A for application, B for budget. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but P's for payment. It's also for principal, but then again, there's interest, taxes, and insurance, and that's just the beginning. Your lender may help you set the bar, which is typically done out of some certain qualifying ratios, from your income to your debt to your down payment and reserves, and then of course your credit rating. So it's important to think this through thoroughly and beforehand, because you know your finances better than what it looks like on paper, and sometimes, as history's proven, for informational purposes only. So the first way to do this, create a budget via income analysis. So let's make a few assumptions here. You have great, consistent income, and let's just say 5 years or more of history. It's stable. It increases a little bit each year, and it's not performance-based. You get your annual raise, and let's just say, for example, based on last year's figures, $8,000 a month gross. And what I mean by gross is before taxes. So what can you afford? Well, let's make another couple of assumptions. And this is a cool one. Unlimited down payment, because behind you, you got Daddy Warbucks, and he plans to gift you not only the down payment, but the closing costs. Besides the fact you don't have any other monthly debt, no other obligations you got to make a payment on. And to boot, you got perfect credit. So by the book, the lender may say it can't be any more than 0.36% of your total gross, i.e., your $8,000 times 0.36, which would be $2,880 a month. Sound sufficient? Well, how does that translate into a home price? You've got a good question. Let's dig a little deeper and make another assumption, $1,500 annually for your homeowner's insurance. And let's assume $5,000 annually for taxes, which would make the average monthly taxes and insurance expense $542 a month. So let's take that taxes and insurance expense, $542 from $2,880, and voila. Your principal and interest payment, your mortgage payment alone, has got to be at $2,338 per month. Great, so that computes to a payment, right? Based on what? Well, let's just assume, again, the going rate today is 6.75% on a 30-year term, meaning 360 months. So that would back into, again, $2,338 and equal a loan amount of $360,500. And since good old Daddy Warbucks has got you covered for not only your down payment, but your closing costs, and let's just assume that we have 20% for your down payment, the home price, as we budgeted, $450,625. Cool. Now, round figures, it could be increased a little bit if you look at the total debt service maximum ratios a la the government agencies. And this is really coming from the lender's side. You're going to need to confirm really what you're comfortable with as far as a housing payment and $2,800 a month for a budget. I think it's a good idea to ask yourself, what are you paying in rent? And what are some other factors to consider? Now, here's a great article from the Motley Fool on the average American's budget and expenses. And funny enough, the article suggests $6,000 a month is the average expense for U.S. households with an income of $94,000 per month before taxes. And interesting, that's funny because it's just right under the $8,000 mark we just budgeted. Now, let's assume again $2,000 for housing and add about $800 for food and another $1,000 for your transportation cost. I think it's a good idea to show what the breakdown of not only your housing based on your rent, your mortgage expense, but also utilities, appliances, operations, and supplies as they've identified, which, by the way, adds another $800 to your budget. Now, I don't know if it sounds like you, but here's a good just way to map it out for yourself. Now, if you took the $2,800 for your housing expense, again, let's round down. Let's add another $800 for your additional housing expenses. Then you're looking at $3,600 a month, and then you're going to have to add in all your other expenses, maybe take some or delete some from this. And your income of $8,000, is that a deal or a deal breaker? Next, let's assume the inverse from the previous example and say that you have unlimited income, but you don't have very much of a down payment. So let's create a budget based on your total out of pocket. I know, sound weird, right? Like anybody else you know? So let's commit $25,000 in this example from your savings account that you want to spend for your total out of pocket. Again, let's assume you have excellent credit and you've put a few years of earnings in a retirement account so you have some money on the back burner. Add another layer. Let's leverage some of the minimum down payment programs using 3% for the Fannie first-time buyer, 3.5% for the FHA, and 5% for conventional. And by the way, you're going to be using Fantasy Mortgage for your approval as your lender of choice, and they've come up with a total budget for you, respectively, $830,000, $714,000, and $500,000, again, respectively to those programs. And here we're just dividing your down payment, your $25,000, by the percentage of down. But wait, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's bring it really into focus because there's other expenses, closing costs. You're going to have hard costs and soft costs. And for this example, let's say you're buying in sunny Arizona because it's a low-cost state. There are no transfer taxes. And to make an easy assumption, again using a different article, let's just boost it up to 1.5% closing cost hard that you're going to have to include on your budget. And let's assume maybe another 0.5% for prepaid expenses, those soft costs related to your property taxes and insurance. So now our total budget becomes Fannie Mae 3% is now 5%, your FHA 3.5% is now 5.5%, and your 5% conventional is now 7%. So now let's refine those numbers from Fantasy Mortgage, which would make $500,000 for your Fannie, $454,000 for your FHA, and $357,000 for your plain vanilla 5% down. So, way to cut you down to size, right? And you can use this article to get a handle and really define what your costs are going to be because they're regulated by the state. There's some things that you're going to have to pay in Pennsylvania that you won't have to pay in Arizona. And again, there's some hard fees, but you also have to look at what the soft costs are. So it's a good idea to use Zillow or Redfin or any of these online housing sites to get ideas on what the taxes are. Then you could also Google your property zip code and the home price to create some sort of budget for your insurance. That way you can get down to the nitty-gritty. Now this is a good way to set up your budget, but lenders are going to use both of these, the first example and second, and then analyze your credit history as another layer to ultimately determine what programs you're going to be eligible for. So take in consideration that your lender is going to want to verify these numbers based on your budget, your application, and document those income and assets, and then likely increase or decrease your budget accordingly based on the review of what they call the underwrite of those financials. So the moral of the story is you can easily create a budget for yourself based on your income or the amount of down payment you want to expense. Thinking this through is going to help you identify what's affordable and is now the right time. Are you looking in the right market? Or you may just have to recalibrate your down payment budget, but don't sleep on it. Rates will change, so will home prices, and then again, there's program availability. Homes can easily just get more affordable or less affordable based on any of these circumstances, and then again, your location. Last, the mortgage market's dynamic. Sometimes programs come off the shelf. Sometimes the down payment or reserve requirements will change. It's a lot to keep in the zoo, but that's all I have for now. Enjoy the week.